Hi and welcome back to my channel, and in this video we're going to be talking about the importance of paying yourself properly. If you are doing work for your community interest company, you need to be paying yourself properly. I'm doing this video because I've got so many students who have told me that they feel guilty about putting in a budget for pay for themselves, that they've been told misinformation, that you shouldn't take too much money for yourself, and it's ended up with people either doing loads of voluntary work or being paid absolute peanuts for what is incredible and beneficial community work. So I'm going to cover that in this video, but before I do that, please hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, so you can stay up to date with all my CIC tips and grant funding videos. So that aside, so let's get into it. So I am really passionate about this subject. I know I've covered in quite a few videos already what you should be paying yourself. So when you do work for your CIC, you will be paid for that work. So you're not paid as a director, as I've covered in other videos. Directors are not paid unless they do work and have a job within the CIC. So if you're doing admin work, or you're doing sessional work, group work, workshop work, you're doing artwork, any of those things you get paid for. So what happens quite often is people fall in a trap where they are just working for peanuts. And I understand, you know, when you first set up your CIC, of course you haven't got your funding yet. So at the very beginning stage, yes, you are working for free, but then you're growing something that's going to benefit you long term. So most of us didn't mind doing that and overcoming that hurdle. So in the beginning, no, you're not going to be paid. But once you get those to the point where you're writing your applications, you need to set some boundaries. So you need to make sure you are paid. So there's two different things you would be paid for. So one is core costs. Core costs are like your overall general running, things that have to be done. So for instance, your website which needs annual subscription, your accounts, which are of course annual, various other sorts of, you know, overheads, all right, rents and things like that. And then there's also your admin that is core. So your management, which is core, which is the overall, like applying for funds and doing all those things. Now, it's harder to get core costs funded, admittedly, but there are grants that do that. Children in Need are one that have a core fund grant, and then that can cover that kind of stuff. So that can pay someone to do all those important things like keep up to date with the safeguarding policies, or design new policies, or do some HR type things. So, so you can get Children in Need core funding. Now, most of the funding that is available for CICs is project funding. So you're running from project to project. So it's more difficult when you're running project to project to make sure you're paid exactly the same amount all the time. It's quite up and down. Like you'll get a big chunk of money pay for this project, and then you run out of, you'll finish your projects and there'll be a little while until you get the next lot. So your money can be up and down. So that's why it's essential that you pay yourself very generously and the maximum amount when you do have a project running. Now, what I recommend is for, if it's an Arts Council project, as a project manager or lead artist, £349 a day is what you should be paying yourself. If you're going to be paying yourself from National Lottery funding, Children in Need, say you're going to be doing sessional work and you're just going to be doing like group work workshops, then that's £150 a day. The other thing you can do in terms of getting your money in is you may hire certain equipment, or maybe even room hire to your CIC. So that's another way you can get paid, because you're hiring some of your stuff that you have as a self-employed person or from your LTD, and you're hiring it to your CIC. So that's another way that you can generate funds that go to you, so that you can make sure you're properly paid and this is your full-time job, and you don't have to worry about going and getting other income, that you know that you can be covered in this to do the work you need to do. So those are really important. What I don't want is for you to think, oh my God, I feel so guilty. I shouldn't be putting, you know, all this money down for myself. That is absolute nonsense. And just remember that funders expect you to be paid that amount. There's a reason why there are those pay guidelines. So whilst, yes, if you put in an application, say you want to volunteer, of course the funder will fund it, but that's not what they expect. And if you talk to them, they will reiterate what I've said. They expect for you to be paid properly. Now, sometimes you can get mixed messages. because there's a lot of misinformation out there. I've even seen bid writers, these actual professionals that write people's applications. I've seen bid writers write and say, no, you don't want to give anything to yourself, you know, the funders won't like it. And they've put in loads of money wasted, you know, to go to, on, for instance, newspaper advertising or radio advertising. And I looked at this application, I was just like, this is just crazy. They've just wasted £5,000 on adverts that could have been done on Facebook for like £100. And they haven't paid this person who's going to be doing all of this work. They've been doing design work, they've been doing the day-to-day social media, they've been going to be running the events, they're going to be writing the materials for the awareness raising, they're going to be doing all this work. So it's absolutely essential, and I rewrote that person's application and put around £9,000 to them. Because if you're doing a project for £10,000, it's completely reasonable that you need to chunk off 9,000. 9,000 isn't that much. When it comes to you actually making a wage, if you think the most livable wages in this country are around 30, 40,000, that's like a professional wage. So you want to make sure you're getting that in, and you're going to have to get that from different funding pots if you're doing it as a project management, project to project kind of level. So the other thing that I recommend is, if you're worried about putting a big chunk just to you, funders do like it if you break that down. So for instance, I just did an application for me earlier on, and what I did with that, instead of saying 9,000 staff cost, I detailed what work I would be doing, and I broke it down. So I put, you know, £3,000, you know, research, I said to be done by me, £3,000 to design the exhibition or to write the book, £2,000 to do the social media and promotion work. So you can break down what you're getting. So if you want 9,000 out of a project, just break it down into a few chunks. They want as much information as possible about what you're going to be spending it on, and that means what you're going to be doing. So if you're getting paid as a sessional worker, then they want to know what you're doing. So here's the amount that we're getting paid to run these workshops. Here's the amount for the advertising promotion side of things. So as I will always also point out, don't pay yourself in bulk at the beginning of the project. Pay yourself in chunks throughout a project, so it looks like you're paying yourself after you've done the work. The grant funders don't like it if you just shimmy all the money straight out to you in one chunk. So again, just break that down over a project. And if you want a lot of the money up front, then just do a shorter project. So then you're going to get the work done quicker and you can get to the money quicker. And the last thing I just want to add as well is, this is one thing I noticed: the people who struggle with this concept the most are people like myself who are from low socio-economic backgrounds. Now, when you're from a working class community, as I am, this is not the done thing to invent your job, to suddenly become a project manager, to pull down tens of thousands of pounds. This is unheard of in our communities. So because of that, people ask questions, and then that makes us feel worried and guilty, and then we kind of absorb that, and then that comes out in our anxiety. So just be aware, if you're coming from that background, that might be why you're feeling guilty. Just remember that the upper classes and middle classes don't. Just remember that the upper classes wouldn't care about pulling. Just remember that for the upper classes, it's a completely different situation. When they've been raised around money and business, they just take it all in their stride. They'll apply for anything. They'll, get money, lose money. It's just all a just different situation when it comes to money. Whereas we worry about money more because of the background that we're from. And we, as I said, we tend to have that guilt. And I think because it's public funds, we don't want to seem to be like money grabbing, and it's something that our community really, frowns upon, because as a community, I've been starved of resources and money. So when we see somebody getting money, people can sometimes be like, well, why have they got that? Oh, they're doing that work now. And oh, have they got a new car? And all this sort of thing sort of starts to go on. But just remember and remind these people, if they say that the money you're pulling down is teeny tiny, okay? It's like a drop in the ocean, and the work you're doing is massive. You are value for money. I say this a lot on this channel. CICs are value for money. The amount of money in the system that leaks out in the NHS, in the criminal justice system, in charities, it's huge leakage, because these are large organisations, these large premises, and huge heating bills, and they waste loads of money on rubbish and stuff that they are paying big crony corporations and all this corruption going on. So you are doing grassroots work with what is actually a tiny amount of money, and you're paying yourself appropriately. There's nothing you need to feel bad about that. Okay, so just remember that, and just remember you do good work in the community and you're worth your money. So it's completely reasonable for you, if this is your chosen career, to pay yourself properly. And at the end of the day, your CIC, and you will fail if you don't do this. Because if you don't, you're going to become overworked, overstretched, underpaid. You're going to have another job to earn a living and to be able to make ends meet. And that is going to be the end of your CIC if you do it like that. To be sustainable means you have to pay yourself properly. So I will leave it there, and any questions, jump over to my website. As I usually say, you can jump in the chat box or book a video call with me. All right.